So, und dann willkommen zu diesem Stream, früher als erwartet, aber ja, ich bin jetzt gerade so in etwa aufgestanden vor 2 Stunden oder so und ich möchte mir das jetzt einfach anschauen, bevor ich es mir noch selber privat irgendwie anschauen tue und danach die Reaction nicht mehr authentisch blind ist. Hm. Gut.
Warning. The following reading contains subject
Ich war
matter that
gestern, wie
some
gesagt, zu
listeners might
müde und
find
deshalb jetzt ein bisschen
disturbing
später den
or
Stream, ein paar Stunden
difficult to
später.
hear.
Wen
Listener
interessiert?
discretion
Ich habe es noch
is
nicht gesehen,
advised.
also ja. Also Zeit für das Apple Sleep Experiment Sequel. Ich meine, ich kenne Apple Sleep Experiment. Ich habe mir das Video von, ich habe mir die Vertonung von Lost dazu angeschaut. Ich habe es selber übersetzt und vertont, bevor ich überhaupt wusste, wer der Lost Narrator oder Mac by Pony sind. Das ist auch sehr, sehr peinlich in Retrospektive. Ich hätte es niemals gemacht, hätte ich nicht gewusst, wer die Leute sind, aber kann ich jetzt auch nicht mehr rückgängig machen. Scheiß drauf. Ich wusste es einfach damals noch nicht besser. Also ja, bin gespannt. Who the fuck is Ice Grace? Ja, aber ich bin gespannt, wie das so wird. Wie gut das Stream so wird. Ja, was ist so gut wie das heute dauern wird. Ich meine, das Intro hat was. Ich kann es noch mal ein Stück Nachricht loslösen, weil braucht man nicht mehr.
Autumn in Ponyville. While the rest of Equestria readied themselves for Nightmare Night the next month, Ponyville busied themselves with preparations for their memorial. Commemoration was the name it was given by the princesses years ago, as it was the only title that seemed appropriate. Although this year marked the 7th anniversary of the memorial's creation, it was
Stimmt, das Ganze spielte 7 Jahre nach Apple Sleep Experiment. Stimmt, da war ja was.
still a sore spot for most
Ich frage mich halt eben
Ponyvillians.
wirklich, was in dieser Timeline sonst noch so alles passiert ist. Was anderes sein muss, einfach weil Applejack nicht mehr da ist.
Commemoration is a time to reflect and honor those who were lost to the Great Massacre. Most ponies were never truly given a satisfying reason for the senseless killings all those years ago. The princesses remained as tight-lipped as the survivors did. Eventually, between Twilight's reassurances and the lack of new victims, fear and anxiety in Ponyville slowly ebbed.
Und scheinbar interessiert es niemanden, dass Applejack nicht mehr da ist, so wie es aussieht. Also ja, es ist interessant.
Of course, in doing so, she and her friends had become the unofficial conductors of the memorial. They nursed their own sorrows by making each year better than the last.
Mhm.
It was the evening before the festivities, and magic was ringing in the halls of the Castle of Friendship. An alicorn, 2 unicorns, and a pegasus were scrambling to finish their decoration contributions as the sunset drew nearer. Flying overhead of the throne room, Fluttershy was attempting to place a thick purple drape, adorned with ribbons, upon the rafters. According to
Also
Rarity's
Twilight sieht auf dem Artwork
specifications,
pissed off aus,
the
aber
test
das nur
seemed
so am
easy
Rande.
enough,
Ist ja
had it
normal.
not been for Rarity's
Bei
refusal
ihr.
to settle for anything less than perfection.
Sag mal eigentlich, warum schafft es die scheiß Webcam nie so fixiert zu bleiben, wenn man sie
Rarity shrilly
einstellt?
called to the pale yellow Pegasus. Fluttershy sighed in frustration, lowering her hoof and holding back the urge to roll her eyes.
What's wrong this time?
Fluttershy called back to her friend in exasperation, wondering how Rarity could be so far away, yet still see some imagined imperfection for the placement of said
Es ist halt immer
drapery.
Rarity, was erwartet
Rarity
ihr?
didn't seem to catch or mind the Pegasus's tone.
It's a quarter of an inch too far to the right. Even I can see that. While I am grateful for your help, Fluttershy, you know how flawlessly decorated the castle must be for our future guests.
Rarity called out, hoping her friend would follow and agree with her logic. She looked away from the ceiling for a moment to finish the stitch she had started on the vast tapestry draped over her hooves. The tapestry was 20 feet in length and nearly took up the entire mapless table in the center of the room. Along with the complicated stitchwork and the bright appealing colors, Bonbon's silhouette took center stage in the piece, her name expertly sewn beneath it. When Fluttershy didn't echo Rarity's logic, Rarity turned to Twilight to back up her statement.
Wouldn't you agree, Twilight?
Twilight Sparkle, the princess of
Ich glaube,
friendship,
Twilight hat andere
didn't
Probleme.
seem to heed
So sieht's
the growing
jedenfalls aus.
tension between her friends, as she busied herself with a checklist.
Ich sag ja, sie hat andere
It was
Probleme.
nearly as long as Rarity's unfinished masterpiece. She glanced up from her scroll, tired eyes locking on the unicorn, before following her gaze to the drapery above.
It looks great, Rarity.
Twilight muttered absently, as the quill in her magic jotted down yet another unchecked task.
Just move it slightly to the left, Fluttershy, and you'll be good. We really don't have time to fuss over silly details like that.
Starlight Glimmer firmly chided, like a mother scolding her misbehaving children. Starlight's horn was aglow, and she was busying herself with ice picks and a giant slab of ice. She'd been sculpting for the better part of an hour now, and she took great pride in the art that she was able to create thus far.
Ja, nee, das sieht tatsächlich gar nicht so schlecht aus. Ich wusste nicht mal, dass Starlight Bild hauen kann, aber
When she
ja.
reached for the smooth surface of ice, where the 14th pony would be, Starlight's heart panged and stomach clenched. She swallowed back a burp of bile, knowing that it would do no good to bring up her objections for the 6th consecutive year. This memorial had become a staple in the lives of the Ponyvillians. Ponies understandably wanted the 14th pony remembered and honored, even if, unbeknownst to them, she was the pony who had slaughtered the rest. Rarity bristled at Starlight's
Also es weiß keiner, dass außer Twilight und ihren Freunden, dass Applejack dafür verantwortlich ist. Das ist interessant. Aber es war auch irgendwie klar, dass es so ist.
Her tone reflected her inner bitterness.
I've done my research. There's a spell that prevents ice from melting. I found it in an old book in the library.
Starlight answered tactfully and devoid of annoyance. Still, Rarity was unimpressed. Fluttershy said nothing, secured the drape in place, and flew back to the ground before Rarity could protest yet again. Rarity pursed her lips to the side in defeat. She was clearly outnumbered.
It'll do. Next, I'll have you hang the floral arrangements.
Fluttershy's ears dropped, along with her stomach. Just when she finally felt freed from Rarity's discerning eye, she was thrust back into the thick of it again. Starlight rolled her eyes and put the finishing touch on the final sculpture. As much as she would have loved to take a step back and reflect on the ice sculpture's mastery, Starlight instead turned away from it. She was hoping no pony would notice its completion, so she wouldn't have to be reminded of that final face. However, a Pegasus desperate to get out of floral hanging duty was only too pleased to offer up a compliment.
It's lovely.
Fluttershy said with an encouraging smile. She trailed off a little when she too saw the 14th face. Seeing that confident, unbridled joy on that frozen, lifeless face was too much for her delicate sensibilities. She could do nothing but suffer the impact of the tidal wave of grief.
I miss her.
Fluttershy's statement hung in the air like a dead weight.
Wer tut es denn
Rarity,
nicht?
Twilight, and Starlight paused whatever they were doing to linger in the awkward silence, while they simultaneously stared at the ice. Unlike Starlight's bitterness and Fluttershy's grief, Twilight was grappling with a deep-seated guilt. It may have been several years since
Ja, nee,
she
es ist auch
last
Twilight
seen
schuld
her.
wahrscheinlich, dass das Ganze passiert
She
ist.
could never forget their final conversation.
Applejack, I don't know what you're talking about. There was no potion. You worked yourself too hard and it caused a mental break.
Twilight could only speculate how painful those words, those lies, must have been for the former element of honesty.
Ja, das war ja irgendwie der große Plot-Twist davon. Und dass Twilight Applejack nicht gesagt hat, dass Applejack gestorben ist, so wie es aussieht.
In such a callous way. On better nights, she could justify her actions by remembering how important friendship is for other ponies in Equestria to embrace. Even if she, Princess of Friendship, had failed her friend, she could still turn it into a lesson. She impressed upon others the importance of what she had learned. and hoped that it would be enough to prevent something like this from ever happening again.
Ja, so sollte man es noch alle machen, was schief läuft. Du kannst nicht rückgängig machen, was passiert ist, aber immerhin kannst du daraus lernen. Also, es ist eigentlich relativ gut.
Even so, the profound painful
Auch wenn es hart ist für jemanden, der theoretisch unschuldig ist, 7 Jahre im Gefängnis verrotten zu
that it was
lassen.
her choice to leave Applejack the way she did. So, Twilight resigned herself to an unspoken atonement and guard over Ponyville like an immortal sentry. She took the role so serious, in fact, that she turned down her former teacher's request to rule all of Equestria and allow the royal sisters to retire. The silence in the throne room
Okay,
had
gut,
now
also
moved for
Staffel
too
9
long.
ist also passiert in der Zwischenzeit. Mehr oder weniger, wahrscheinlich ein bisschen anders ohne Applejack, aber es ist passiert. Okay, interessant.
And ended the silence for them. A bright pink earth pony paraded into the room. She triumphantly pushed a large dessert.
Pinky weiß nicht so gut aus.
Pinkie Pie called out joyously with a voice so powerful it could have alerted the entire castle. She hurriedly pushed the cart towards the others to show off the various cupcakes, pies, custards, pastries, and the elaborate 4-tiered cake that she had prepared.
War gerade mir irritiert, dass ich kurzzeitig Live-Zeit in OBS nicht sehen konnte. Ist auch egal.
You made more?
Fluttershy asked nervously, her eyes beholding the trove of sugary delights, with more horror than appreciation.
I don't know how many ponies are coming to the party, and I want every pony to try as many different desserts as they like.
Pinkie answered swiftly, blissfully unaware of Fluttershy's skepticism.
There are only so many ponies in Ponyville.
Starlight said pointedly.
So.
She glowered at the
Ich hatte kein
ever-growing
Taskleiste im
mountain of
Vollbild,
desserts.
keine Ahnung warum.
Oh, but that doesn't count the ponies of Canterlot, Cloudsdale, the Crystal Empire, Trottingham, Hoovington, Appaloosa.
Wait, what?
Twilight interjected, finally resting her quill to join the conversation.
Oh ja, man hat scheinbar internationale Gäste, die an dem Zeug teilnehmen. Interessant.
Everywhere! This year's celebration will be so big that all of Equestria will commensecrate with us. Rememberate? Commemorate. I can never remember what it's called. So get those taste testers tester ready. It's time for my next course of creamy, dreamy cupcakes.
There was a collective churn of stomachs in the room at the mention of trying Pinkie's desserts. She had started baking 3 days ago and hadn't stopped. It wouldn't have been so unbearable if she hadn't been so insistent on her friends trying and approving each new batch. Every pony was well beyond their tolerance of concentrated sugar.
I have every flavor you could possibly think of. Strawberry, raspberry, boysenberry, bumbleberry, banana, orange, blue, and...
Pinkie stopped mid-rapid ramble, and her demeanor instantly dropped. She'd unintentionally told a lie by declaring that she had made every flavor. There was one flavor she had purposely left out, a flavor and ingredient that she would never use again. Ponies had asked her periodically why she no longer baked apple desserts, but she would simply state that apples reminded her too much of sadness.
Ja, was auch wahrscheinlich auch wahr ist, bis zu einem gewissen Grad, ja.
Once again, the silence hung in the air.
Ja,
This time was cut short by the sound of a speedy Pegasus zipping through the open doors and completing
oh
the
hey,
circle
Rainbow
of
Dash geht's
friends.
scheinbar auch noch gut.
Sorry I'm late. We're planning or decorating or something, right?
Rainbow Dash asked, hovering over her throne chair around the circular table. Rarity scrunched up her face in disapproval.
The worst of us certainly have been. We've been here since dawn and still have so far to go. This is only the 10th tapestry, you know. I'll have to stay up all night
Hauptsache
to
Rainbow
finish
Dash
the
ist mal
rest.
wieder zu spät. Das ist sehr
Possibly even more
schön.
important than this. Me and the Wonderbolts
The Wonderbolts and I.
Whatever. We were practicing the routine that we were going to perform tomorrow, and I wanted to make sure that it was just right. And then, well, Spitfire made this comment about how I was going to tire myself out, and I said that even with all the practice, I could still whoop her ass.
Warum ist das so typisch AD? Wirklich. Das ist so typisch.
Rainbow admitted
Ist
with
tatsächlich
a
so.
smile.
My animals haven't been fed all day. We really could have used your help.
Fluttershy interjected in exasperation, and Rainbow was surprised to see her, of all ponies, aggravated at her absence. She knew it must be serious if Fluttershy was frustrated.
I'm sorry. I'm here now, and I'm still not too tired to help. Here, I'll hang these.
Rainbow said, gathering some of the bouquets on the ground and zooming around the room. Rarity's eyes widened in horror. She trusted Rainbow at least to hang her floral arrangements just right. She tried to protest, but Twilight spoke first.
That'll save us some time. Since Pinkie Pie apparently invited all of Equestria, we have to get these tasks done as quickly as possible. I divided our duties into separate lists.
Hört sich sehr schön an. Twilight hört sich sehr motiviert an. Sag mal, eigentlich, es ist sehr, sehr lustig zu sehen, wie in dem Detail hier jeder am Arsch ist. Sehr schön. Sehr schön. Schönes Detail.
We should finish about an hour before the celebration begins.
Sure wish a certain little assistant was around to help us.
Rarity grumbled bitterly while eyeing her task list.
But I suppose one does have to leave the nest eventually and...
Und nettes Detail, weil ja es da halt jetzt Element der Ehrlichkeit ist, dass es einfach so billig über Applejacks Ding geklebt ist. Das ist nicht so schön. Ja, ich erinnere mich. Zoomt das jetzt gerade mich hierauf an. Da zoomt schon bei hier drauf hin, aber ist jetzt, da merkt man auch, wie billig das Ganze einfach gemacht wurde, wahrscheinlich. Ich meine, klar, was hätten sie anderes machen sollen, aber das ist natürlich schon ziemlich hart und was. Aber ja, ich hatte komplett vergessen, dass da halt immer ja das Replacement von Applejack ist.
It was going to be a long night. The hours ticked by, and eventually, Twilight Sparkle found herself hunched over a desk in her bedroom. Her eyes were transfixed on the specific scroll laid out in front
Ja,
of her, while a
Vorbereitungen sind anstrengend, scheinbar.
waited for the next cue. Twilight broke a moment of long, unblinking concentration when the candle she had ignited to write by snuffed itself out, its wax spent. She ignited a new candle inside, crumpling the parchment in her magic and tossing it aside with the other discarded failures. Twilight peered at the task list she had meticulously written for herself, but the nagging feeling in her stomach prevented her from moving past the little checkbox labeled, "Write the hostess speech to start the memorial." She knew that it had to be just right. Somehow, she had to convey that it was okay to celebrate the lives of their loved ones, and still feel sorrow for their absence. She needed every pony to feel safe, secure, and protected by their princess. She also needed to stress the importance of friendship during trying times like these. And that was the part tripping her up the most. Just as Twilight pulled a new clean scroll from her desk drawer to start again, she heard frantic hooves pounding against the stone floor. The sound was growing increasingly louder as they approached from down the hall. Typically, Starlight Glimmer would graciously knock before interrupting her mentor, but there was no hesitation.
Okay, es gibt scheinbar wichtige Nachrichten, so wie sich das anhört.
Twilight saw the terrified look on Starlight's face and whirled around to face her. Aside from the panic, the only thing Twilight noted out of place was the scroll held too tightly in Starlight's magic, hovering nearby.
Starlight?
Lass mich raten, Applejack ist aus dem Gefängnis entkommen, so wie sich das anhört.
But magicked the scroll to the princess so hastily it almost collided into her face.
Lass mich raten, Applejack ist aus dem Gefängnis entkommen oder
taking the
ausgebrochen.
scroll from Starlight's magic into her own before scanning the semi-crumpled urgent message. As she read, reality refused to sink in.
Aber ich kenne das Bild, das hat man als Bild schon mal in der Preview gesehen.
Escaped. A struggle. The Canterlot guards can't recall the past few days. She was living in a waking nightmare, and each word she read pulled her deeper into that soul-shattering terror. Twilight reread the scroll once, then twice again in a silent panic, while the distressed Starlight waited on bated breath for what to do next. When the princess didn't pull her darting eyes away or speak, Starlight finally interjected.
If it's been days, she could be in Ponyville by now.
Twilight glanced up at
Schön,
Starlight.
dass schon bei questorische Gefängnis die ihre Arbeit nicht machen und erst Tage später die Nachricht schicken, dass Applejack abgehauen ist. Aber ja, besonders wahrscheinlich, weil sie in Kentland gefangen ist. Nach ein paar Tagen, innerhalb kürzester Zeit, kann sie wieder in Ponyville sein.
We need to get word to the girls. They're the only ones who know that Applejack is still alive and...
Twilight stopped abruptly when she and Starlight both heard rustling from
Ja,
above.
das ist das Problem, wenn alles so gecovert up ist.
Both mares' minds spiraled with all the possibilities. Was it an open window? Was it hoof steps? Was it something knocked over in haste? Neither of them could be sure, but both feared the worst.
Was eigentlich mit Spike?
Starlight said, vanishing before Twilight could respond. Twilight's heart was racing, and beads of sweat formed on her brow. How could this be possible? How could Applejack escape? Perhaps
Alles ist
Applejack's
möglich.
story softened the heart of one of the guards, and he helped her escape. But even if she had escaped Canterlot's prison, where would she go? What would she do? How would she react to seeing her friends again? How would she react to seeing Twilight again? Twilight's heart was beating fast and loud now, but she felt as though she were
Twilight, du hast
trapped
Scheiße
in the
gebaut,
belly of a
Punkt.
drum. She realized that she'd been uselessly pacing for an unknown amount of time, just trying to grapple with the cascading horrified thoughts of what was to come. Blinking a few times.
Und sehr interessant, wie gesagt, das ist schon mal genau am 7-Jahres-Anniversary von dem Scheiß. Wurde Apple Sleep nicht 2016 released und 2016 ist ja jetzt 7 Jahre her? Fällt mir nur gerade so auf. War das nicht sogar so? Wenn, dann ist das mehr passend als erwartet.
She raced to the far side of the bedroom and ignited her horn. She had to ignore the hiccup lapses of magic from sheer anxiety to find the specific stone in the wall behind her bed. The stone pressed deeper into the wall with magic as the bed began to rumble. Slowly, a platform under the bed gave way to a secret set of stone steps, leading to a dark room below.
Ah ja, Notausgang, okay.
Steps, two at a time.
Wahrscheinlich.
Torches along the walls ignited to shine her way forward. She stopped at the bottom, skidding on her hooves at the horrifying sight. There, on the ground, laid the remnants of a magical lock that was used to secure her secret laboratory entrance. Terrifying still was the light pouring in from behind the door, slightly ajar.
Okay.
The unmistakable clatter of glass slamming into a wooden surface from within sent a new wave of anxiety.
Warte, er hat halt jetzt nie abgeschlossen, nachdem das Ganze passiert ist, oder B? Wie kann da jemand reingekommen sein, wenn Twilight so der einzige Eingang durch Twilights und Twilights Bett ist? Das macht jetzt etwas wenig Sinn, aber okay.
It ripped through her like a lightning bolt.
Bin gespannt.
She pressed forward, thrusting the door open to see the horrible reality in the flesh. Applejack, the orange earth pony who had haunted her thoughts and dreams for 7 long and languishing years, was standing unabashedly amongst the collection of empty potion bottles.
Ja.
Her fur was pale, almost cream-colored from the lack of
Aber wie ist
sunlight.
Applejack mit in das Labor reingekommen? Das ist die andere Frage. Vor allem, ich hätte jetzt nicht damit gerechnet, dass das so schnell eskaliert. Wollt ihr mir etwa sagen, dass Applejack keine medizinische Behandlung bekommen hat, während der ganzen Zeit, wo sie im Gefängnis war? Das macht irgendwie keinen Sinn. Also es macht wirklich keinen Sinn, aber gut, für Storygründen ist das gut, aber ja.
With fur clasped tightly to the frail frame, Twilight opened her mouth to speak, but no words would come. Thoughts wouldn't solidify. Her body refused to move. How did she get in? Did she use the other passage? What happened to the lock? It was supposed to keep every pony out.
Achso, es gibt einen anderen Weg rein. Achso, ja, sehr schön. Damit hat sich meine Frage geklärt. Und ja, scheinbar hat Applejack irgendwie das kaputt gemacht. Wow, wie? Keine Ahnung.
To keep her work secret and safe.
Wahrscheinlich, weil Twilight nicht mehr rumexperimentieren tut, oder?
Applejack said. Her voice was far removed from the happy country-tinged accent that Twilight once knew.
Hallo, Angel Jack.
There was a
Du bist auch in diesem
deep
Universum
breath and
scheinbar.
a roughness akin to some pony dying of thirst. Gotta say, I thought you'd be here sooner. Suits me just fine, though.
Apple.
Yeah.
Wahrscheinlich wäre auch Twilight früher da gewesen, wenn schon bei Kentralot nicht so inkompetent wäre und Briefe nicht innerhalb nicht eine Woche zum Verschicken brauchen. Dann wirklich ernsthaft brauchen Briefe nicht in der Regel, wenn sie über Post geliefert werden, nicht 1-2 Tage Minimum. Ich kapier's gerade nicht.
That dirty little secret you've been trying to hide for years. Bet you thought I'd just fade into obscurity by now, huh? Afraid not.
Ja, du warst ja auch relativ obskur und vergessen bis vor kurzem. Dein dein Comeback hat kein Mensch gebraucht.
Tilting her head back as she brought the rim of the bottle to her mouth. The swirling purple liquid disappeared.
Also hier ist Twilight an der Seite, das hat kurzzeitig so gewirkt zu Beginn, als ob das aus Twilights Sicht direkt wäre.
With a satisfied exhale, the Earth Pony mockingly licked her lips for any excess potion that may have lingered there. Twilight didn't know how it was possible to be even more horrified than before. But seeing that carelessness provoked a panicked outcry.
Fand er ja auch Applejack eigentlich normal drauf war, als wenn sie im Gefängnis war, denkst du, während Twilight mit ihr geredet hat. Ja. Geist hat Applejack einen Haufen Scheiße gesoffen, wodurch sie jetzt wahrscheinlich wieder in einem eher unter Drogenzustand ist. Ich weiß auch nicht.
No! What are you doing? You don't know what that potion does!
Guess I'll have to figure that out now.
Ja.
Applejack said, her demeanor.
Weißt du, Applejack ist es, glaube ich, scheißegal inzwischen. Selbst wenn sie noch sterben sollte, ich glaube, ihr ist es egal.
Eerily calm and devoid of concern.
Why?
It's been so long. I can't remember what it looks like. What color? What consistency? I need it. I need to feel that again. And I ain't got time to pour over your incessant drip
Yeah.
of fond out. Applejack motioned to the bookshelf of journals that lined the laboratory walls. Twilight had recorded every potion and observation of their effects. It was a lifetime of work, and Applejack would have been there for hours.
Ja,
Jay kept piercing eye contact with Twilight.
weil Leute zu unfähig sind, Briefe zu verschicken, deshalb nur. Und weil Twilight scheinbar vorher nicht gehört hat, dass jemand vorher unten in ihrem Labor unterwegs war. Oder sollte Twilight nicht informiert werden, wenn ihr scheiß Sicherheitszauber kaputt gemacht wird? Ja. Ich meine, es ist immer noch gut, aber trotzdem, die Logik ist irgendwie seltsam. Hätte man von Twilight erwartet.
A renewed sense of focus apparent in her horrified and worried expression.
You're looking for the sleepless potion? That's what started this mess! It's why you've been locked away! Why you killed all those ponies! Why in Equestria would you think I would keep that?
Twilight demanded, tears staining her cheeks, as her guilt roared itself to the forefront of her mind. You? Throw out a chance to study something. I may be out of touch, but I ain't stupid. Applejack snarled, casually brushing the pieces of shattered vial from her fur.
You've consumed all of those?
Twilight gasped in horror. Her eyes finally
Das wird sehr, sehr lustig noch.
discarded bottles, beakers, and vials around her
Das wird noch sehr, sehr
laboratory.
lustig
She
alles.
stuttered in disbelief.
But not all of my potions are for ponies! There are several that can't be ingested!
Well, guess you better hope that these kill me then, huh? Dangerous to combine so much magic. I can only imagine the hell I'm in for if I drink the wrong ones. Not that it matters, of course. I suppose death is another way out of this hell you saddled me with. Twilight couldn't help but
Ja,
shudder
jedenfalls
at
recht hat
the
sie.
unemotional way Applejack shirked off her own uncertain doom. Her eyes quickly scanned the potion bottles that remained, but she couldn't be sure if that one was among them or not. Does that make me the experimenter? Or the experiment? AJ asked rhetorically as she reached for yet another potion bottle. Twilight didn't hesitate, focusing her magical blast at the next potion to stop her. This time, however, Applejack was able to move quickly to the side and avoid the stream of magic. 1 second she was standing a few feet from the princess, and another she was across the room,
Ja,
bracing herself
scheiße.
against a wall.
Das, wie gesagt, das wird noch sehr, sehr lustig sein, wenn Applejack mit dem ganzen Scheiß zugekackt ist.
Singed pages fluttered about the room. Both ponies were initially stunned by Applejack's newfound agility, but AJ's surprise melted into sheer delight. Super speed? That's awfully handy. You've been holding out, Twi. What would Rainbow think if she knew you had something like this all along?
Drop it!
Twilight screamed as she ignited her horn again, her crosshairs on Applejack's new position. If you say so. Applejack answered with a shrug, taking the potion in her hoof and smashing it against the floor. A great plume of green smoke overtook the room instantly, and Twilight reared back, inhaling the gaseous byproduct with a gasp.
Ja, sehr geil.
Sensation in her nostrils started a wave of guttural coughing,
Ja.
so loud that she almost missed.
Glückwunsch, Applejack ist jetzt overpowered. Scheiße, toll. Hast du super hinbekommen, Twilight.
Twilight fucking Sparkle, you've outdone yourself. Twilight gritted her teeth and tried suppressing the burning in her throat to find the earth pony through the haze. She ignited her horn, but the light was useless against the thick green fog that lingered. To the left, Twilight heard the sound of glass sliding into AJ's hoof. Despite the limited visibility, it seemed that AJ was
Ich mag diesen
still
Artstyle
going to
irgendwie.
down as much potion as she could find. Twilight knew she had to take action, and that it was better to stop Applejack than try and salvage her work. So, deeply chagrined, Twilight blasted magic in that direction, wincing at the sound of her precious equipment exploding on impact. Applejack laughed in response, clearly unharmed. Her voice was now coming from the right side of the room. Twilight whirled around again, desperate to stop her.
Oh Mann,
It
ey.
became very apparent that AJ was enjoying her new speed and sight as her voice bounced from one side of the room to the other.
Ja.
What's wrong? Having trouble aiming? Now why'd you go and shoot over there? Are you blind and dumb? Applejack continued on, unscathed and unceasing. Twilight was on autopilot now.
Weißt du, ich habe ja viel Gutes von diesem Sequel erwartet, aber dass es so gut wird, hätte ich echt nicht gedacht. Und ich finde diese Szene unfassbar lustig aus irgendeinem Grund. Fühlt sich einfach gut an, das so zu sehen. Aber jetzt ist ja endlich die Frage geklärt, dass Twilight an allem schuld ist und es keine Halluzination war. Weißt du, weil Twilight könnte sich nicht einfach wegteleportieren.
Twilight screamed in a fit of coughing, collapsing to the floor for the hope of some shred of fresh air that lingered there. Her magic was only making things worse, and
Ja.
the swirling colors of the room were so thick, it looked as though she could grasp the very air in her hooves. Twilight shakily and slowly pulled herself up again. She'd given up the hope of finding a clean breath, and did the only thing her brain could think of, chase Applejack on hoof. In her clumsy, desperate pursuit, she ran into just about every piece of furniture that still remained in the laboratory. Unseen objects nicked at her fur. Her mane and tail would occasionally catch on some kind of hanging debris, and little shards of broken potion bottles bit into her hooves.
Wow, das ganze Szenario wird so absurd.
AJ was one step ahead, taunting and laughing.
Ja, kein Wunder, Applejack hat auch irgendwie Speedfähigkeiten des Todes, jetzt zumindest temporär. Also who cares?
Quicker than that, why? Gonna let me get away? Oh, you're not even trying. You gotta want it.
Ich liebe diesen Sarkasmus.
Coming out tonight. What's Ponyville gonna think? Eventually, Twilight heard Applejack's hoofsteps rapidly ascending the stone stairs towards the bedroom. Applejack was escaping again, and Twilight was no closer to finding her than she was the door leading out. Panicked, she reached forward, her hooves colliding into the wooden table that had previously
Und wo ist
held the
eigentlich
carnage.
Starlight hin?
The splintered pieces raking across the flesh
Also
of
nein,
the
wirklich, wenn das...
torso
Die waren
forward
doch im
set
Twilight
her
Schlafzimmer vorhin, warum ist sie
The
nicht
impact of the
mitgekommen?
fall disoriented Twilight.
Wahrscheinlich habe ich irgendwas nicht verstanden.
Was causing an unparalleled dizziness. Her ears were ringing loudly, but through its shrill scream, she still heard another deeper burst. Liquid splashed on her front hooves, but the sensation turned from wet to cold, then sharp to scorching in mere seconds. Twilight cried out in pain as she heard the sizzle,
Fuck.
then felt the burn of acid eating her flesh. Still, she couldn't stop now. Nothing else mattered but getting to and stopping.
Applejack. Not only were ponies in danger,
But her secret shame would be laid bare for all the world to see.
what horrible consequences would follow.
How many more ponies would have to die before Twilight would succumb to the reality that aging
Applejack was beyond saving in any
capacity? As Twilight struggled to find her
Das war
bearings
gut.
again, a scream from above pierced through the mist. It was a horrifying scream of terror that snapped Twilight out of flight response and into fight response. With renewed focus,
Das ist
she
Starlight, oder?
teleported herself from the mess below.
Hätte man
her
vielleicht schon
voice
früher
still
machen können,
hiccuping with
Twilight.
unstable magic. She tried to trace the origin of the sound and appeared just outside of Starlight Glimmer's room.
Starlight! It's Applejack! She's in the castle!
Twilight screamed, pulling the handle of the
Ja,
door,
du Scheiße, Twilight
only
sieht
to
nicht so
find
gut
it
aus.
wouldn't budge. Twilight slammed her body against the
Aber so
door,
meine Leute
hoping
mag ich
it
meine
would
Grim
give
Darks,
way,
nur so am
but it
Rande.
remained firm.
Starlight! Let me in!
Twilight shouted, pleading with the mare who she could clearly hear tussling with some pony else from within. When more slams to the door didn't give way,
Weil man könnte ja die
backed
Tür nicht
off
aufsprengen.
and blasted it with magic. However, her spell instantly deflected, as if it met an invisible magical shield. It ricocheted and whizzed over Twilight's head, colliding with
Scheiße.
one of the castle pillars behind her. Twilight jumped aside when the pillar collapsed into a pile of gemstone textured debris. Replace me, do ya? Twilight heard Applejack's voice behind the door, and she grew more desperate. The crumbling pillar beside her gave her a frantic, but potentially
Gott, ist das
helpful
absurd und hart, aber
She
ich
shifted her
mag's.
focus from the door to the wall beside it. Twilight's horn steadily grew with light and magic, and she gathered all the strength she had for this singular spell. When she released it, the magical collision roared through the hallway as stone crumbled and dust billowed.
Ja, nix kann dem Element der Magie irgendwas bieten oder dem Alikon, wenn es stark genug ist.
But Twilight pressed forward. She sucked in a deep breath and squeezed, contorted, and pushed herself through the wall. The dust
Und ich wette,
hadn't settled
Starlight
yet,
ist tot
so
jetzt.
Twilight had to
Einfach
sprint
weil
through another haze
das ist der Sinn
to
davon,
find both
dass Leute
Applejack
sterben.
and Starlight Glimmer. It was then that Twilight's eyes fell upon a gruesome sight. The unicorn mare was laying on the opposite side of the room, near the ruins that were once her belongings. As the dust from the
Oh hey, sie lebt
explosions
noch. Na, ist doch nicht so schlimm, wie ich
some
dachte.
of the destruction in the room came into view. The bed was in pieces, feathers from the pillows still adrift in the air, mixing with the dust from the explosion. The armoire was nearly unrecognizable. All that remained were sharp splinters of wood and strewn about clothing. A mirror that once stood atop a vanity table was smashed into tens of thousands of pieces. Clothing, tapestries, childhood memorabilia, eviscerated. Then there was Starlight herself, who was in a similar state of upheaval.
Ja.
Her skin was marred with fresh injuries. The red soaked through her fur so thoroughly that
Ja, das ist
wounds
schon
were
krass irgendwie.
indistinguishable from one to the other.
Ich liebe die
Bone in
Grim
her
Darks.
back hoof was jutting backwards, disconnected from its place. But
Sehr
most
schön.
horrific of all was the cascade of blood oozing through hooves that clung desperately through a severed jugular.
Why?
Starlight asked, her breath caught in her throat. She was looking up at something that had been hidden in the haze. Twilight blinked a few times to bring her eyes fully into focus in the dim light, and found Applejack looming over Starlight. There was a strange, unnatural, and unnerving smile on the Earth Pony's face, looking pleased with herself for ridding the world of her so-called replacement. This was the moment that Applejack was no longer a pony in Twilight's eyes, but a demon that needed to be destroyed.
Clearly magic was no threat to this evil
Beast. So, Twilight changed tactics,
gripping a sharpened shard of mirror in her magic.
and leaping towards Applejack with a frenzied cry. Surely the weapon would instill some fear.
And at the very least, draw
Applejack away from Starlight.
Mhm.
Much to Twilight's surprise, her plan worked.
Ah ja, ich mag dieses verschiedene Narrator-Zeug. Das und es ist immer gut. Und ich kann nicht beschreiben, was ich daran so gut finde. Das ist so die Sache. Ich mag halt eben diesen Bild-Kaputt-Effekt mit verschiedenen Narrator-Stimmen, weil ich meine, das war, glaube ich, gerade im Scribbler.
Applejack leapt out of the hole the princess had just made in the wall and disappeared without a trace. Twilight could do nothing but stare after her, her magic finally failing as the shard of glass clattered to the ground. She knew the severe consequences that would soon follow if she didn't pursue her, but Twilight's mind wouldn't detach itself from the need to save her friend.
Starlight! Starlight! Starlight!
Her heartbeats were drumming loudly again, echoing Starlight's name over and over, as she allowed insanity to creep into her reality.
Ja, mach doch irgendwas, versuch ins Krankenhaus zu kommen oder irgendwas, aber mach nicht, sitz nicht wie immer da, Twilight, und lass die Leute einfach sterben. Dann bist du ja schon bei Experte.
Twilight cried out unintelligibly, collapsing on the floor beside her friend. She wanted
to hold her, to ease the pain, to
Oh, hi, Scribbler. Ja, das habe ich endgültig. Ich mag es, wie wir zwei verschiedene Narrator haben, je nach der Situation. Und wie das Bild rumspasten tut. Das hat was. Das hat was. Okay, Starlight stirbt.
Twilight managed through garbled cries. She watched Starlight's face change from fear to confusion to finally sorrow. Twilight knew she should have said something, offer up some kind of solace or peace, but words wouldn't come.
Yeah.
Instead, she helplessly kept her gaze locked on Starlight's as seconds slowly passed them by. The princess's stunned, silent grief was the last thing Starlight Glimmer witnessed in this world before slipping away into darkness.
Ja, fuck.
Twilight let out a scream that would echo through every hallway in the castle. She pulled Starlight into her embrace, cradling her body against her chest, like a mother coddling a child. Twilight was consumed in grief.
Oh, das ist ziemlich hart. Macht ein bisschen traurig, wirklich. Aber Gott, ich habe nicht damit gerechnet, dass das so hart und so relativ emotional wird. Ich habe es nicht erwartet.
When she felt a large, heavy object slam into the back of her head, and the alicorn collapsed onto the floor.
Mhm. Ja, vielleicht hätte man nicht vergessen sollen, dass Applejack noch in der Nähe ist. Oh, es gibt was am Ende. Ja, bin gespannt. Also das war's, dann Slide ist tot. Ich ahne, dass das Ganze wahrscheinlich in sein Konzept verfallen wird. Denkst du, dass nach und nach Applejack alle töten wird, die etwas damit zu tun haben? Oder noch besser, sie tötet alle und du bist dabei zu sehen und kann nichts machen. Das wäre auch so die andere Idee. Und sehr schön, dass das Ganze auch noch am Memorial Day stattfindet. Also es ist krank. Mag es aber, also es wird gut sein. Also war es ja auch gut. Ich habe doch gewusst, ich kenne den Artstyle irgendwo her. So gewusst, dass ich das erkannt habe irgendwo her. Gerade eben das letzte, das kam das Bild, das war letzte vor diesem jetzt. Genauso hier, ich habe auch gewusst, dass ich das irgendwo erkenne. Aber schon krass, dass für jedes Bild mit einer anderen Person gearbeitet wurde, das ist schon relativ sehr nett. Ja, ich bin dann sehr gespannt, den ganzen abgefuckten Scheiß, der jetzt noch kommen wird. Also wie gesagt, ich habe eine Idee, wie das Ganze ablaufen wird. Einfach das Dings da. Der Pitcher jetzt nach alle töten tut und wahrscheinlich vielleicht sogar schon als letztes getötet wird. Einfach weil, why not? Glaubt mir, spricht okay. Aber ansonsten, ich glaube, sehe ich jetzt auf den ersten Blick niemanden, den ich nicht kenne in den Credits. Aber ja, wie gesagt, ich habe die Theorie, dass jetzt Applejack noch alle töten wird und vielleicht gut weiter im Leben erhalten tut. So gesehen, einfach nur damit sie sehen tut, wie sie die ganzen Leute töten tut. Ich glaube, darauf wird jetzt am Ende hinauslaufen. Das war jetzt meine Idee. Aber, jo. Auf jeden Fall schon meine erste gute Episode, kann ich nicht viel mehr dazu sagen. Ich kann mich nicht beschweren. Ich bin schon Patreon, also ich unterstütze dich schon. Okay, Part 2 ist also am 17. November. Okay, gut zu wissen. Stimmt, war nicht der Plan, das irgendwie alle 2 Wochen oder sowas rauszubringen oder alle 3 Wochen in den Dreh rum, dass wir damit relativ bis Ende des Jahres durch sind. Ich bin gespannt, ob alle Deadlines dann eingehalten werden. Aber gut, ich habe ansonsten nicht mehr viel zu sagen, außer das war dann dieser Stream, das war wie gesagt gut. Ich bin gespannt, wie die ganze Story laufen wird und ich habe ja schon meine Theorie geäußert, wie es jetzt wahrscheinlich weitergeht, aber ich könnte auch komplett falsch liegen. Und ich liege ja auch meistens falsch bei solchen Sachen, also wen interessiert's? Ja. Also gut, ich habe nicht mehr viel zu sagen, außer wir sehen uns dann beim nächsten Stream wieder und ja, tschüss.